Welcome back, everybody, to Niners Now. I'm your host, Brady Grustas, at GrustasBrady on X. You can follow me there. And today we've got all the intel from Saturday's preseason loss to the Denver Broncos. And of course, stick around until later in the show when we'll be talking about the latest 49er to make the NFL Top 100 list, Trent Williams. But of course, before we begin, go ahead and subscribe down below, leave a like, leave a comment, and let's get into it. So before the game, the Niners made a couple of roster moves. On Friday, the team signed Tanner Mordecai and put Equanimeous St. Brown on injured reserve, ending his 2025 season. And on Saturday, before the game, the team signed running back Keyshawn Vaughn and released guard Zach Johnson. Now, Vaughn spent most of last year on the Niners practice squad. He played in 3 games with the team, but he only had 17 total snaps on the year. Vaughn is back now due to the injuries to Isaac Guerendo, Jordan James, and Amir Abdullah, which was suffered in Saturday's game. And he's going to help the Niners get through the preseason with enough healthy bodies, I hope at least. I suppose Vaughn's got a chance to make the practice squad again next year, but I've got him as the lowest ranked running back on the roster. He's all the way down at 86. The Niners also had a visit with former Colts running back Deion Jackson, but went with the familiar face in Vaughn, and then another familiar face after the game on Sunday when the Niners signed running back Jeff Wilson Jr. Jeff Wilson is back in the Bay, and with all these injuries, we sure could use him, right? Wilson originally joined the Niners back in 2018 as, I believe, an undrafted free agent, and he spent 4.5 years here in the Bay before he was traded to Miami mid-season. He's been pretty buried on the depth chart in Miami. They had Raheem Mostert, they had Devon Achane, they had Jalen Wright, and all those guys were getting snaps over Wilson. But now he's back with a chance to earn another roster spot here in San Francisco, although it'll probably be pretty tricky. I always really liked Jeff Wilson, and even if this is just, a temporary addition to get through the preseason, I'll be happy to watch him play in the red and gold again. Reminds me of that angle route that he caught out of the backfield against the Cardinals to win the game. I think that was 2018, maybe 2019, one of those years. Wilson's super fun, and I'm glad he's back. Now let's talk about Saturday's game. Overall, there was lots to take away here. The Niners went up 9-0 early after a nice opening drive from Mac Jones and the backup offense, and a few really impressive drives from the backup defense, including a safety by Chase Lucas. But as soon as those third stringers started to come in, this game got very ugly very fast for the Niners. It's clear that there's a steep drop-off in talent on this 90-man team, and it's somewhere right between second string and third string, right? The Niners have good starters, and they have some good backups, as we saw on Saturday, but they do not have good third stringers, at least not right now, with an extensive injury list. And we saw that on Saturday. Denver's depth came out in full force, and while the Niners' backups did well against Denver's starters, the Broncos' backups demolished the 49ers' third and fourth stringers on the way to a 30-9 final score. There were also a couple of new injuries in Saturday's game. Upton Stout didn't play at all, thanks to what Shanahan called calf tightness. Now, I'm hoping that that's minor, and really what I'm hoping for is that they kept him out of the game because he's going to be the starting nickel in Week 1. I think that's what everyone kind of assumed when it was announced that Stout wouldn't be playing. So to hear that little tidbit about the calf tightness, it's a little bit worrying, but, we'll see going forward. It seems like it'll be pretty minor. We've got an update on Michael Williams' injury. He's going to officially be out about a week or so. I'm really hoping that we get to see Michael play at least in that Chargers game before the regular season starts up. Hopefully the Raiders game if we're really lucky, but I want to see him at least get some game action before the regular season gets here. Richie Grant also didn't play on Saturday. He's got a knee issue, I guess, and Shanahan said he'll be out roughly a week as well. Marquise Siegel had a knee bruise in the game, but it sounds like that one's pretty minor, and he'll be back shortly. Amir Abdullah injured his rib and had to come out of the game. He also fumbled on the play that he got hurt. Real rough play for Abdullah there. And right at the end of the game, Robert Beal suffered a groin injury, which means the Niners now have 19 injured players on their 90-man roster. 19 out of 90. That's over 20% of the entire roster. It's hurt after Week 1 of the preseason. I mean, hopefully some of these guys are able to come back and stay healthy for the rest of camp. But now let's talk about who stood out. All right, there's a lot to take away from this game. And I want to start with a few team-wide overall thoughts. First, I want to shout out Guy Haberman. All right. He does excellent 49ers coverage on his YouTube channel, and he's stepping in to call the preseason games while Greg Papa recovers. Shout out to Greg Papa. Hope you're doing well. I thought Guy was great on the broadcast on Saturday, and I'm really happy that he's on board. Now, the first real note that I have for the team is that the Niners do not have a reliable backup offensive tackle. Spencer Burford did not have a great game at left tackle. Austin Pleasance was getting demolished at right tackle. I believe those two played the entire first half as well. They were not only struggling against the Broncos starters. To me, you can't count on Burford or Pleasance at tackle if there's an injury this year. And we still haven't seen Andre Dillard at all, but he may be this team's last hope for a solid backup tackle, because Isaac Alarcon and Isaiah Prince didn't look all that impressive either. Now, my second note here, the Niners should only keep 2 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster. It should be Brock Purdy and Mac Jones. Both Carter Bradley and Tanner Mordecai looked awful on Saturday, and I mean awful. If you only caught the beginning of the game, you may not know this, but it was horrific. And honestly, Mac didn't even play that amazing either, but QB 3 and 4, that was disastrous. In my opinion, it's actually really difficult to evaluate the Niners' depth on offense because those 2 quarterbacks, Bradley and Mordecai, they just could not run the offense or execute with any sort of consistency at all. And you could see it immediately. The Niners were up 9-0 when Mac and the quote-unquote starters were pulled from the game. And immediately, the Broncos scored 30 straight points, with, I think, 20 in the second quarter alone. I mean, we didn't even get a Jake Moody field goal attempt in this game. The third and fourth string offenses were completely unable to move the ball whatsoever. And in my mind, it's because of the quarterback play. When you've got 4 turnovers and you go 1 for 12 on third down, you lose games, especially when the defense couldn't force a turnover all game long. I don't think you need both Carter Bradley and Tanner Mordecai on this roster. I just don't. I think you can pick one and give the QB3 job to a veteran. I mean, CJ Beathard is unemployed right now. Why not him? I am sure it can't be worse than what Bradley and Mordecai put on tape on Saturday. And my final overall thought before we get into the specifics is that the tackling got progressively worse as the game went on. By the fourth quarter, it was genuinely pitiful. And yeah, it's the preseason, right? These guys are fourth string for a reason, but my goodness, it was ugly. Jarrett Stidham demolished the Niners defense on Saturday, and a lot of it was because of that really poor tackling. But of course, now let's get specific about some guys who raised or dropped their stocks on Saturday, or even did a little bit of both. The big story from this game, to me, was Chase Lucas. Lucas was everywhere in this one. He played nickel corner the entire game with Upton Stout out, and he was incredibly effective. I mean, he wasn't perfect, right? He gave up a pretty big catch on fourth down to Troy Franklin, but he was constantly blowing up run plays. He had a phenomenal pass breakup on Franklin where he leapt in the air and tapped it away and almost came down with the pick. And he was screaming off the edge on nickel blitzes all game long. And that includes the blitz that forced the safety on Bo Nix. That's where those extra 2 points came from. It came from the defense, and it came from Chase Lucas. Lucas plays with so much energy, man. Shanahan called him the Energizer Bunny, and I totally see why. It seems like he's kind of won the backup nickel job, and I wonder if it's enough to earn him a spot on the 53. Chase Lucas was easily the biggest winner of Saturday night, but also, I mean, we were all winners for getting to watch Chase Lucas, right? And one more thing on the nickel blitzing. If this is a big part of Saleh's offense throughout the season, I cannot wait to see what Upton Stout does, screaming off that edge. He might have 4 or 5 sacks this season if Saleh blitzes as much as he did in this preseason game. I'm super excited for that wrinkle. Next, on to our next standout. I thought Bradley Anae played really, really well. He played a bunch. He was rotating in throughout the entire night, and he just kept winning. According to PFF, he had 3 pressures officially, but to me it felt like he had at least 7. He was beating everyone he lined up against, including Broncos starting left tackle Garrett Bowles on a big third down in the first quarter. Now, he wasn't perfect either, but Anai played very well, in my opinion. He's got some real juice as a pass rusher, and he had a couple of nice plays against the run as well. Although I do think the run game is where he needs to improve. He needs to set the edge more consistently. He had kind of a lapse in the fourth quarter as the Broncos were starting to run out the clock a bit. So yeah, looking for a little more consistency from the run game from Bradley Anai, but he's got real pass rushing juice. And of course, if we're talking about standouts, I got to mention my guy, Jordan Watkins. He beat Jaquan McMillan for a 50-yard catch on a slot fade on the very first drive of the game. It was an awesome play. He elevated, made the contested catch, broke the tackle, and gained, 10 extra yards or so. Now, Watkins did have a few plays where I thought he could have done a little bit better, but I had to at least give him a shout out. The last guy, though, who I thought really raised his stock was Sebastian Valdez. And Kyle Shanahan agrees with me on this. Valdez played mostly after the first quarter, but he did get a couple of reps against the Broncos starters, and he beat their starting left guard, Ben Powers, for a really nice shoestring tackle on RJ Harvey. He also held contain well, got a half sack on Jarrett Stidham, and he was in the backfield a lot in the second half. If Valdez keeps playing this way, I'm not sure how you leave him off the 53-man roster, especially with all the inconsistencies and question marks at defensive tackle. Now, there were some guys who did not impress, all right? And let's get the obvious one out of the way. Carter Bradley and Tanner Mordecai did not look like NFL players on Saturday. Bradley's got a strong arm and he's got good velocity on his throws, but he's a one-read quarterback and he stares down his receivers every play. And Mordecai's got good athleticism, but he was wild. He plays like one of those inflatable tube guys outside a car dealership, just flailing and frantically running around. They each had a pick, and they were just overall awful on Saturday. Nick Martin also, he had a couple of nice plays on Saturday, but he had a lot of really rough ones. His tackling is super inconsistent right now. He flies to the ball. He's very fast, but he takes bad angles and just doesn't wrap up well enough on a down-to-down basis. He's clearly not going to play much this year. He's going to be a multi-year development project for sure, in my opinion, but I do have to give him some credit. His speed was on display against the Broncos, and he definitely did make some nice plays. He had a couple nice run fits, had a couple nice open field tackles. There were silver linings from Nick Martin, but there was a lot of clouds that have got to clear up before he gets any real play time. Now let's go over some of the position battles that we've been tracking all summer and see how those guys performed versus Denver. First, I want to talk about depth cornerback. These guys had a bit of an up and down day. Dallas Flowers, who's the leader in the clubhouse right now, gave up a deep touchdown to former 49er Trent Sherfield. He had good coverage on the play, but completely lost the football in the air. It looked pretty silly. It was not a great play from Flowers. He did get some returning action, though. He had a nice tackle or two in the run game. Flowers was, he had that one bad play, but he was, fair enough for the rest of the game. And he was also one of the starting cornerbacks. So, I'm sure they'll give him plenty of more chances going forward. Starting outside, opposite of Flowers, was Darrell Luter Jr., who had a pass breakup on a 50-50 ball with Cortland Sutton in the end zone. Not an easy play to make, right? He almost came down with the interception. Didn't, unfortunately. But Luter also gave up a touchdown to Lucas Krull on an awful coverage bust. Genuinely one of the worst I have ever seen. Luter was also not great in the run game. Felt like he probably had the worst day out of all the cornerbacks, especially because Trey Brown had a pretty nice day. Now, Brown didn't play until the second half. It was Flowers and Luter early, with Chase Lucas in the slot, of course. And then when Flowers and Luter came off the field, in came Trey Brown and Jacob Robinson, with Lucas staying in that slot position. Brown is clearly behind Luter on the depth chart, although I don't think that'll stay that way for very long, because Brown forced a fumble on a Jarrett Stidham scramble in a very big spot. There's my dog behind me. Very big spot, forced a fumble on Jarrett Stidham while he was scrambling. Stidham had just beat them on like a 3rd and 15 scramble, and then he went for it again, and Trey Brown just pops the ball right out, but unfortunately the Broncos did recover that one. But he also had a nice tackle in space to prevent a first down later on in the game. He had a nice shoestring tackle on, I believe it was Blake Watson. It was one of the Denver running backs. got very close to the first down and would have definitely gotten it if not for Trey Brown. So Trey Brown had a couple of pretty big plays, was making plays in big moments, even though it was with the third and fourth string defenses. We mentioned Chase Lucas earlier. He was balling out today, but Jacob Robinson also had a very nice day. He played on the outside on Saturday, and he honestly had a couple of good moments. Maybe that joint practice performance was just kind of a bad day for him because he did not look good at outside corner on last Thursday, but he did on Saturday. He blew up a screen pass. He was all over it, and he was at least active in the run game. I thought he could have been better. Gave up the edge a time or two, but he's clearly physical and he's got the mentality to play the run. He's not one of those guys who will run away and try their best to not tackle somebody. I want to show some love real quick to Brayden Willis. He played the entire game and was run blocking really, really well, including while the starters were in. He sealed off Nick Bonito on that Patrick Taylor Jr. touchdown on the very first drive, and I was super impressed with Willis's blocking throughout the game. Jake Tonjes might have a little competition on his hands for that tight end 3 job. Maybe this is a competition that we should be tracking a little bit more closely. Now, Tonjes also had a couple of nice grabs, but Brayden Willis had a great day. Now let's talk linebackers. Luke Gifford and Tatum Bethune each had a few very nice plays, I thought. Bethune in particular had a great day. He had to leave the game briefly. They called it an ankle injury, but he was back in before too long. And Bethune might have been the team's best tackler on Saturday. He was sound, he was on his marks, and he was wrapping up. We mentioned Nick Martin before, and I gotta say, Jalen Graham and Stone Blanton were a little bit up and down for me. Graham saved a touchdown with a punt return tackle. It was great play, but he didn't make much of an impact on defense. And Blanton had a beautiful peanut punch, but it felt like he was constantly diving all over the place. That told me that he either doesn't have the athleticism or doesn't trust the athleticism that he does have to make the tackles that he needs to make as a linebacker. I certainly hope it's the latter because that can be fixed. That's mentality. I hope it's not the fact that he just doesn't have the athleticism. And I think he does. I believe in him. He had a couple of nice run fits. It was just some of the actual tackling. He would dive and not quite be able to make the play. At defensive tackle, like we said, I think Valdez was the star of the day. He was awesome. But there were some really nice plays early on in the game as well, before Valdez even entered. Kalia Davis and CJ West ran a beautiful, and I mean beautiful stunt on a third down in the first quarter against the Broncos' first team offensive line, but Kalia Davis couldn't bring down Bo Nix. Now, CJ West had a couple of very nice plays in the run game, but back to Kalia Davis, he was honestly playing quite well. He had a few nice plays as a penetrator in the run game, although he did get blown off the ball here and there, and that's always been more of Kalia Davis's style. He's not going to hold up great against double teams, but he might be able to shoot through the offensive line and stop a play in the backfield, from time to time. Kalia Davis also had a sack. He cleaned up the Bradley and I pressure on Jared Stidham. I didn't see any flashes from Alfred Collins, though, which was unfortunate. But with the fourth string unit, all the way at the end of the game, when most people would probably turn it off, I actually thought that Bruce Hector had a couple of sneaky good plays. He was penetrating pretty consistently. He might be a practice squad candidate, something to watch. And I want to wrap up this segment by talking about the safety group. Marcus Siegel was one of the biggest stories of the entire game for me. It felt like number 36 was always around the ball. He had multiple really nice run fits. You would blink and he'd be in the correct gap. And I'm talking against the ones too. He was making plays on RJ Harvey. Siegel's speed, it really shows up on the field. And he's a hitter too. He plays with violence and he had a couple of big pops on Saturday. He had some big TFLs as well on RJ Harvey and Tyler Bidet, I think it's how it's pronounced. But he also had some missed tackles, including a really big whiff on a Broncos punt return that was nearly taken back for a touchdown. If Siegel can be more consistent with his tackling form, I think he's going to be a really nice player for the Niners. Also at safety, Jalen Mahoney had a few nice plays, including a sweet diving pass breakup in the end zone to prevent a touchdown. And on the very next play, he had a big hit to stop the receiver short of the first down. But Derek Canteen also played some safety. Did not look great out there. He gave up a couple of big chunk plays. I don't know if Derek Canteen's going to be a practice squad guy for this team. So that is the preseason week 1 recap. It's definitely unfortunate to see the Niners' depth get outclassed like that, give up 30 straight points to end the game, but that first quarter and a half, it was honestly quite impressive from the backups. The Broncos looked genuinely flustered on offense and defense when their starters were out there. Hopefully we start to see some of the injured guys make their way back onto the field, and we see some of the Niners starters for the Raiders game this weekend. I think that's a pretty big part, honestly, of how imbalanced the depth looked on Saturday. Almost none of the 49ers starters played, while Denver did play most of theirs, and a lot of the depth on this team is injured anyways. So if you fix even one of those problems, that should help in week 2. Never mind if you fix both. Now, before we get out of here, I just want to chat about Trent Williams, who was revealed as the 45th player on the NFL Top 100 list. We've talked about Christian McCaffrey, and we've talked about Nick Bosa already. Both of those guys took pretty big drops from their rankings last year. Trent had a big drop as well. He was ranked number 7 last year and is all the way down to 45 now. And honestly, I think this just had a lot to do with a lack of team success last year. Sure, Trent is not in contention for the best player in the world anymore, but in my mind, he's still the best offensive tackle in the NFL. There's not a better run-blocking tackle on planet Earth. I'll stand on that. And he's comfortably a top 10 pass blocker at the position as well. The NFL ranked him behind Deion Dawkins. Like, are you kidding me? All due respect to Dawkins, he's a good player, but let's be serious. Dawkins was getting worked by rookie Abdul Carter. He's not better than Trent Williams. The only issue with Trent is his tendency to miss a couple of games every year, but when Trent is on the field, he is still so awesome, even as he's getting closer to 40 years old. I'm sure we'll see a decline eventually, right? But Trent is the kind of guy to still be playing really good football when he inevitably decides to hang it up. While we are talking about the NFL Top 100, though, I'm starting to think that they're not going to include Brock Purdy. We saw Justin Herbert, Baker Mayfield, and Matthew Stafford already revealed on the list, and I'm just not confident that the league is going to put Purdy above all of those guys. But you never know. We could be surprised. We'll keep an eye out for it coming up. That's it for this episode. What was your biggest takeaway from the first preseason game? Let me know down below. Leave a comment, leave a like, and let me know if there's any topics that you'd like to see me cover. Thank you all for watching, and subscribe for 49ers videos 5 days a week. I'm Brady Grustas at GrustasBrady on X. This has been Niners Now, and I'll see you tomorrow.